Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Ni, a specialist in the study and manufacture of biotechnology potentially used for warfare. Today I'll be explaining the concept of biological weapons to 4 levels of students and specialists. Without further ado, let's get started. Hello Louis, do you know what biological and weapon means?
No, I don't.
So biology means the study of life. So biological is related to human, animals, and plants. Weapons mean things that can hurt someone, like guns, rocks, or knives. Therefore, biological weapons equals to biology plus weapons, that is, living things that can hurt you. So most common type of bioweapons are viruses and bacteria. Do you know what a bacteria is?
No, I don't.
So bacteria is a tiny little organism like those ones, and they are everywhere around us. They're in the air, on our skins, and throughout nature.
I think some of them are good for us and some of them are bad and can cause me sick.
That's correct. On the other hand, there is viruses. Have you received any flu shots or smallpox vaccines?
Yeah, I think I have them every year.
Yeah, so those are viruses, and those shots are either used to combat virus or introduce virus into your bodies so that your bodies will no longer be hurt by them. So what if bacteria and virus enters our bodies?
Do I get disease?
Yes, so think of your body as a castle and the cells in your body as armies, and virus and bacteria are the bad guys. When the bad guys wanted to invade the castles, they fight with the army. If the army failed to stop them, the castle will be occupied by the bad guy. In the real world, this situation leads to an infection or a disease. Therefore, what biological weapons is doing is basically introducing those bad guys to a lot of people and invading their bodies, so people will become sick and eventually die. Now, do you think that it's the right thing to use biological weapons?
No, if that can make people sick, we should never use it.
That's right. Hi Louis, have you heard of biological weapons?
Yeah, like the techniques used in movie series Resident Evil.
Yeah, that's right. So bioweapons use biological agents, commonly microorganisms, that are produced and released deliberately to cause disease and death in human, animals, and plants. The general types of bioagents include virus, bacteria, fungi, and protozoans. Do you know the difference between bacteria and virus?
I think virus cause stronger disease than bacteria and can only grow inside a whole cell, where bacteria are living organisms self and could malfunction cells if infected.
That's correct. More importantly, their mode of infection is different. Viruses infect a host cell and then multiply by thousands, leaving the host cell infected, and therefore the viral infections such as influenza, AIDS will be systematic, spreading throughout the body. Whereas the pathogenic bacteria have more varied operation and will often disturb normal functions of cells, kill cells' tissue, spread away, release toxin that destroy cells' metabolic machinery, or participate in a massive immune reaction that itself is toxic. Now, do you know what fungi is?
Yes, like mushrooms and yeast.
That's right. Then do you know why fungi might be harmful to humans?
Are some of them poisonous?
Yeah, so few fungi are pathogenic to humans, meaning that they can produce toxins and render disease or allergic reactions within humans and animals. How about protozoans?
I have no idea.
So protozoans are single-cell microscopic animals of the kingdom Protista. They can become parasitic and cause diseases. So now we know the common type of bioweapons. How do they actually work in causing infections and diseases?
Do they enter humans' body and kill at the cells?
Well, that's pretty much the general process. Let's first talk about how toxin cause diseases. Do you know what toxin is?
Are toxins harmful substances released by organisms and causes disease when presenting a high concentration in the body?
That's right. Let's take the cholera toxin as an illustration. So bacteria called Vibrio cholerae will release an AB exotoxin into its surrounding once entered the intestinal tract. This secretion will cause the activation of G proteins receptor and the production of CAMP, a second messenger used for intercellular signal transduction. With this signal, chloride is released from the cell, and sodium flows from the negative direction, and the water follows, producing diarrhea eventually. Now, do you know how virus may cause disease in our bodies?
Yeah, I think the viral genome first enters the whole cell, then is being replicated and transcribed by the host cell's transcription factors and other proteins. Through this way, the DNA of virus are copied for thousands of times. Viral particles are produced and released to replicate more.
That's correct. In this way, the host cell are gradually being killed by the virus, and the virus will dominate our bodies. Do you have any ideas of where and when the biological weapons were used?
I think they were used in World War II, like the mustard gas and tear gas.
That's right. Other bioweapons are also used by the Japanese as they're trying to spread plague-infected fleas and flies covered with cholera to infect the population in China during certain warfare in World War II. Do you think that bioweapons and bioterrorist attacks will become a common type of warfare in the future? How deadly will it be?
I think that biowarfare will be as deadly as a nuclear weapon because it's very contagious and deadly. I think biological weapons should be handled with strict laws and regulations worldwide, or else it can be ripped and the entire human population like the nuclear bombs within years.
Hi Ricky, could you give examples of common bioweapons that you know?
One biological agent that I can think of is the botulinum toxin.
Is what we usually call as Botox?
Yes.
Oh, I think this toxin is a neurotoxic protein produced by the Clostridium bacterium that prevents the release of neurotransmitter acetylcholine at the neuromuscular junction. So how does it really work?
So basically, acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter that facilitates the contraction of muscles. Without Botox, it is embedded in the synaptic vesicle, and with the help of the snare proteins, combined to the nerve membrane. The vesicle then opens to release acetylcholine to its receptor and facilitate the muscle movement. However, if Botox is present, one of its components, the lighter chain, will cleave to the snare proteins. Botox itself will actually bind to the nerve's membrane and prevent the acetylcholine from binding.
So without acetylcholine, the muscle will be unable to contract and will render the symptom of paralysis, which is the loss of the ability to move and perform muscle contraction.
Yes, that's right. Patients affected with severe symptoms may require weeks or even months under mechanical ventilation to breathe.
So what makes Botox a perfect bioweapon?
Botox are perfect bioweapon because, firstly, it is extremely toxic. In fact, it is 50 to 100 times more toxic orally than sodium cyanide. Secondly, the botulinum bacteria are easy to grow. And lastly, the toxin is relatively easy to produce in large quantities.
I see. So besides Botox, what are some other potential bioweapons in the world?
Well, there is also the Ebola virus. The Ebola virus enters humans through direct contact and a process called micropinocytosis.
Is this a type of endocytosis, also called cell drinking, where large molecules are engulfed into the cell?
Yes, that's right. Micropinocytosis occurs mainly in dendritic cells that works in the immune system to ingest the extracellular liquid and dissolve molecules, such as the antigens, nutrients, and growth factors. The Ebola virus takes the advantage of this system and interact with the receptor proteins on the plasma membrane to make it think that it's a dead cell debris that needed to be internalized. Therefore, the membrane forms a vesicle that engulfs the virus and internalizes it into the cell, into the compartment called macropinome.
I see. So once inside, the Ebola virus will release its genetic material, use the host cell's machineries to replicate its own DNA copies at the expense of the death of the host cell, or at least an inability to function properly. And through this mechanism, more dendritic cells, the meiosis, and the immune system will gradually weaken, inducing the symptoms of bleeding and fever within patients.
Yep, that's correct. I heard that Ebola virus was once produced by the Soviet Union as bioweapons in the 1980s. Have you heard anything about that, or is it true?
Yes, I think I've heard it. However, I think that 22 states, including Russia, has signed the Biological Weapon Convention that banned the production of bioweapons. Also, the weaponization process of a virus is often harder and takes longer than expected. Therefore, it's unlikely that Russia will actually produce those weapons in a very short period of time.
Yes, that's right. But imagine how deadly Ebola virus will be if it actually had been weaponized. The World Health Organization has said that the virus seemed to kill about 70% of the infected people in Africa from 2013 to 2016.
Wow. So as we currently are in the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak, do you think that COVID can be a type of bioweapons used for biowarfare in the future?
My speculation is that it will not be employed as a future bioweapon because even though it is highly contagious, COVID-19 is not lethal enough and has a relatively low death rate. These are characteristics that will make it an ineffective bioweapon.
Hi, Ms. Xu, welcome. So from an expert's perspective, how hard is it actually to cultivate a deadly strain of bacteria or virus?
Weaponizing a bioagent is a complex multi-stage process, and it's not always that easy to produce an effective bioweapon. For example, when mass-producing Botox, the final stage is to bind the bacteria to a powdered material like bentonite or silica gel. However, studies done by the US military indicate that releasing this powder could kill approximately 10% of the people downwind for a distance of 1/3 of a mile.
So even if it's released in an indoor space or enclosed event, it will still leak out and have a major impact on the overall city?
That's right. Therefore, this research has to be suspended to look for other approaches that will not harm the civilians. Generally, creating a successful and useful bioweapon is way more complicated than simply cultivating a toxin or virus and spread it worldwide.
I see. So we've discussed a lot about the physical damage that bioweapons can bring. What are some psychological implications of biological warfare or bioterrorism?
Biological weapons essentially are weapons of terror. There are evidently acute and long-term effects of experiencing biowarfare, especially in causing more fear, confusion, and uncertainties.
I remember that during the 2001 anthrax attacks in US, thousands of people thought they were infected and seek treatment and have been traumatized ever since.
Yes, so trying to distinguish those who haven't been infected could complicate medical centers' ability to treat those who have been exposed and infected and render physiological responses such as anger and social isolation.
So what are some biodefenses against those weapons?
Most weaponized lethal biological agents are intended to be delivered as aerosols, which could cause infections and when breathing in. Therefore, the most effective defense is a good protective mask equipped with filters capable of blocking bacteria, viruses, and spores. Vaccination toward biological weapons will be effective too. However, effective vaccines for plague and cholera are only produced in small quantities for short of what might be needed if large numbers of people were to be infected.
I see. So we've discussed so many horrifying effects of biological weapons. However, is there ways to utilize this technology to save lives or in a more beneficial way?
Yeah, I think that is possible. It's all about the dual uses of biological agents. Back in World War I, when the Germans were using mustard gas as a chemical weapon against the Allies, there were hints that sulfur mustard can actually become cancer cures when examining the exposed French farmers. When the sulfur is replaced by nitrogen, the mustard gas actually become a chemotherapeutic agent.
I see. Also, I think Botox is deadly as a biological weapon. At the same time, it is widely commercialized and used in the cosmetic market as a way to erase wrinkles and prevent aging.
Yes, that is right. So if we understand the biology and chemistry of an agent, and if we can give the right amount at the right time, place, and way, a toxic chemical can be used for the good too.